Let them all dope. If the system is corrupt, screw it. Just kind of. So there have been some posts recently about weightlifting being banned from the Olympics. And what I want to say is there has not been any explicit verbiage that would say it has been banned. Weightlifting has been on the chopping block for a while. There have been warnings from the IOC that they would take it out of the competition list. They even warned that they were going to take it out of Tokyo. They have warned that they were going to take it out of Paris, and they have warned that they're going to take it out of LA. There is still a potential for them to take it out of Paris Olympics in 2024. Most of us had thought that it was locked in for 2024, but we are now seeing that there is a potential for it to be taken out. What I want to do is I want to look at the executive board address that states this. But again, guys, what we're seeing here on this powerlifting motivation post, weightlifting banned, that is simply not true. I don't know why they came up with this headline when this executive board member says that it is still possible for weightlifting to be in if they clean up their act. But anyways, let's watch.
Their serious concerns remain until today. First, the EB is disappointed about the ongoing governance instability, which maintains in charge of the current IWF leadership and further delays the transition towards an effective change of culture. Second, confirmation is required that there will be no relaxation of the eligibility criteria in the current IWF constitution or in the application of these criteria. There should be 3, no further delays in the elections. And fourth, the link between the number of quota available per country and the doping history of the respective national federation is required in the proposed qualification system for Paris 2024. And we will, of course, continue with a strict monitoring of this evolution. Initial sports program for Los Angeles 28. The IOC Executive Board today decided to include skateboarding, sport climbing, and surfing in the list of 28 sports to be submitted for approval at the upcoming IOC session in February in Beijing. For boxing, weightlifting, and modern pentathlon, there will be a pathway for inclusion in this initial sports program. These may potentially be included in the LA 28 in the initial sports program by the IOC session in 2023, if by then the respective international federation will demonstrate to the satisfaction of the IOC Executive Board that they have addressed the following areas. IWF and its future leadership must demonstrate its transition towards compliance and effective change of culture. Furthermore, they must successfully address the historical incidents of doping in the sport and ensure the integrity, robustness, and full independence of its anti-doping program.
Okay, so there you have it. Not only is it not banned, the executive board member here is explaining the pathway that weightlifting should take if they want to be in the 2028 games. So please, if you see weightlifting is banned, weightlifting is out, comment that is not true, because it genuinely is not true. Weightlifting has been on the chopping block for a long, long time now. And I'm going to give you guys some examples of the corruption that we've seen in weightlifting from my previous videos. In this video, the buying and selling of Olympic medals, this is basically hearsay, but certain doping things, certain things around doping, certain things around corruption have been uncovered in the IWF that lead me to believe that something like this is true, has happened, and has happened a lot of times. Essentially, Shaheen Nasrallah was an elite weightlifter from Iran. And at the time, he was going up against guys like Piros Dimas, Georgi Atsenidze, who is now the head coach of the Georgian team. He coaches Lasha. Shaheen basically said that he was told to fake an injury. Not explicitly told to fake an injury, but they said, you cannot win this session, or else your entire team will be they will test positive. So essentially, they have control over the positive tests. And because Iran, I think, did not pay the money to Ayan directly, they were now going to be, they now basically were forced to not medal in certain events because other countries had done that. Now, this was back in 2000. Who knows how long it had been happening by then, but basically none of that changed until about 2012, where we had retesting of the B samples of athletes. This is right around the time when Icarus came out, and these retests were very, very damning. Basically, we saw in the 94 kilo men's class, 10 athletes, the top 10 athletes were caught doping with their resamples. That means the 11th place person was the victor. Now, look, this isn't all about doping, okay? The systematic corruption of this sport is palpable. In August of 2020, we saw the German documentary called Lord of the Lifters. This documentary exposed a lot of weightlifting's issues, and it is incredible, some of the things that we saw. After this, it launched the McLaren Report, which is a private investigative report on the corruption within weightlifting. And basically, the main thing that they came up with was Thomas Ayan and IWF show corruption at the highest possible level of sport. Following all of this kerfuffle, the IOC 3 months ago said that the IWF needs to basically clean house. And at this point, there was no threat for 2028, and we pretty much were sure that weightlifting was going to exist in 2024. There was no threat on 2028 yet. However, now, after, and this is an article written by Brian Oliver, if you guys want some incredible journalism around the sport of weightlifting, Brian Oliver is a king. This guy is incredible. This is great investigative journalism on a sport that does not have any. He is the guy who holds the IWF's feet to the fire, and I love him for it. But basically, this is called this headline here is weightlifting heads for trouble again as IWF calls off elections. Now, Seb, Owen, and I made a video called Save Weightlifting. It was right around the time that the IOC said, hey, IWF, let's play ball here. And basically, we had explained, and I encourage you guys to check that video out because both Seb and Owen they explain what has happened in the past, 25, 30 years in weightlifting. And Seb explains why weightlifting still needs to exist in the Olympics. I will talk about that in a second. But essentially, after this meeting, all it did was clarify what we already know, that weightlifting is on the chopping block. Weightlifting can get the death penalty. It's not really new, but it definitely is more scary.
The Olympics is the pinnacle. It is the peak of our sport. And that's how I tend to think that Olympic sports loses its Olympic status. It loses that magic. It loses that spark. And with that, it then loses the funding that lots of governing bodies around the world put into the development of that sport. The Olympics is a way for many countries to assert their dominance on the rest of the world in a fun, friendly kind of way. As soon as weightlifting is withdrawn from the Olympics, countries like Georgia or China or the USA will lose a lot of the funding that the government puts into developing that sport because Why develop it if you can't use it to express your power on the global stage? If member federations lose their funding, then the best of the best will disappear. The IWF as a federation will somewhat lose its importance at that point because athletes won't need it anymore, because the IWF is really only relevant so that athletes can use it as a vehicle to get to the Olympics. The Olympics is the pinnacle. As that then happens, the sport will to some degree disperse. The most talented will either lose funding or interest, and many of them will then just be scouted up by other Olympic sports. It will become to some degree a sport of hobbyists, which is fine. Weightlifting is a hobby for me, it's a hobby for Zach, it's a hobby for Owen, it's a hobby for many of you. We don't necessarily need the Olympics to keep us motivated, but to develop the best and to bring in new talent and to bring in young athletes who look to the Olympics as a goal of theirs. That Olympic status is indeed very important. Without that Olympic status, to some degree, weightlifting will become like powerlifting, where we end up just with lots of different federations. The sport is split, the athletes are dispersed, no one really knows who the best is. You can't compare this person in this federation with this person from that federation. The single IWF federation is in many ways what gives weightlifting its legitimacy, its reputation. If you want to be the best, this is how you demonstrate it. It's through the IWF and eventually through into the Olympics. If you, like me and like Owen and Zach, do not want weightlifting to lose...
So one thing I want to add, and again, if we talk about doping and you say, let them all dope, if the system is corrupt, screw it. Just kind of this really defeated style, this defeated attitude. All I would ask is that you think about the potential for doping to turn into something really, really nasty, which it has and likely will do again. We can't have children doping, and yet we've seen many of these countries have their kids start doping as early as 12 years old. I believe that doping will always exist, and this is not a doping problem. The main issue here is corrupt sport coat wearing boomers who are so unaware of the real world. I made a video talking about how the IWF has like the worst social media ever. There are people breaking records and they're posting images from 5 years ago on their they're posting CrossFitters warming up. They're finally starting to come around and starting to post actual videos of the current world championships that are going on right now. But how long did that take? We have these boomers at the top that aren't in any way related to the athletes and the coaches and the federations that are actually doing the work here. If people dope, test them and pop them if you can. If you can't pop them, then so be it. But that isn't the issue that we're talking about. There are heads like Thomas Ayan that are still in the IWF, that refuse to leave, that have this iron grip on a sport that is dying. And if they don't let go, it will die. That is the problem that I genuinely have. I continue to go to these national meets where I see these athletes and I see these coaches who want to go to the Olympics and they want to do it the right way. No matter what you say, no matter what you think out there, there are people that are genuinely doing things the right way, and they're doing it en masse in America. And I know them personally, and I see them work, and their dreams will be shattered because they will not be able to go to the Olympics because of some assholes who have zero awareness of the real world, who have this grip on a crime syndicate style that they've had before, the way things have always been done, and they want them to continue that way. It is complete and utter bullshit. If this isn't a wake-up call to the IWF, I don't know what is.